All right. Well, thank you, Arlen, for that wonderful information and introduction as well. And again, I just want to officially say good afternoon and welcome to today's session, Empowering Teams, the Leadership of Psychological Safety. And I want to thank you again for being part of this session sponsored by Ed Leaders Network. I know that some people have actually put their information in the chat, but if everyone could, again, if you could put your name, your school or organization, your position, and the number of years you've been in your position, I would greatly appreciate it. So if you could put that information in the chat, again, to everyone in the chat, and we're just going to take a couple of moments and we're going to begin. So I'm going to give us a couple of seconds to do that. And I see we already have information from Vince, Naj, Megan, Denise, and thank you, Arlen, for that information. And thank you, Vince, again for superintendent for 3 months. Congratulations. We have Casey Shahid, assistant superintendent of CNI for 2 years. We've got, again, some superintendents from Midlothian. We have Darren, assistant principal. Again, welcome. All right. Well, thank you all for letting me get to know about you. I want to tell you about me. So again, my name is Daniel Perry. First and foremost, I'm the owner and leader of Impactful Pathways, which provides coaching and mentoring and professional learning for school leaders to ensure that they are supported, successful, and sustained in this important work of positively leading thriving school communities. I bring over 20 years of experience, mostly in Chicago public schools. I've been a teacher of math, science, and technology. Additionally, I've been an assistant principal of an elementary school. Additionally, I've been a principal of two elementary schools. I've been a deputy chief of schools, which is basically a principal supervisor or area superintendent for over 35 schools, including elementary schools and high schools. I've been a chief of schools in that same network of schools, which I helped lead during COVID and after that time. Additionally, I've been a managing director of networks, which did curriculum implementation for three large urban districts as well. And I come here humbly and thankfully in terms of that. And I just want to wish all of our school principals, again, leaders, a happy Principal Appreciation Month, because to all of our school leaders, as we know, principals deserve all of the accolades and praise for the continued service on behalf of your respective schools and communities. And again, I want to thank you all for just being here for the work that you do as well. So what are we going to delve into today? So again, participants in this session, really you're going to learn about psychological safety and explain its importance in leadership and the school environment. Additionally, we'll be talking about how psychological safety is the cornerstone of high-performing teams. This session will delve into the essential components of psychological safety, its impact on individuals and teams, and the crucial role of leadership in fostering a learning culture focused on impactful continuous improvement. So I want to ask you all, and you can go in the chat in terms of this information. So have you ever experienced any of these situations? Implementing a new curriculum, having the next one is having new teachers, having a high turnover of teachers, welcoming newcomers into your school, dealing with reluctant or veteran teachers, being in a situation where you're doing most of the talking or thinking in the meeting, having situations where teachers are feeling overwhelmed, or are you feeling overwhelmed? So, um, and so I thank you, Casey, for giving a yes in terms of events. Thank you for giving a yes in terms of that. And I see Naj also as well. You're definitely talking to me. So, and if you are feeling these things, I want to say thank you for acknowledging that, and I want to say thank you for the awareness of that. I'm not going to say that this presentation is going to, as Denise said, all of the above, and I'm not going to say this presentation is going to solve any or all of these challenges. But I'm glad I've got your attention, and we're really ready to get started in terms of this work. Yes, definitely teachers and staff feeling overwhelmed. So we're going to talk about in today's agenda, we're going to talk about, first of all, we did the welcome and introduction. We're going to understand talk about understanding psychological safety and really delving into the key and critical components of psychological safety. Additionally, we're going to talk about strategies to address psychological safety in teams. Then we're going to have a little period of question and answer, and then talk about questions and next steps. So with this quote, I'm going to read this quote, and it talks about what psychological safety is. So, psychological safety is the belief that we can show up and be ourselves and that we won't be punished for being honest. And that quote is by Amy Edmondson, who is a Harvard researcher who defined the term psychological safety. And have you ever been in a situation where you felt that you couldn't be your true self, where you couldn't really give your honest and authentic feedback? So again, what the researcher Amy Edmondson did, she actually defined this term of psychological safety. So really, her work is the seminal work in terms of this term. And her study focused on teams within a manufacturing company, and they explored how psychological safety influenced their learning behavior and overall performance. She found out that teams with higher psychological safety were more likely to openly discuss errors, learn from them, and ultimately perform better. She was surprised to find out that the teams with a higher number of good outcomes actually made more mistakes than teams with fewer good outcomes. It was a surprising result, but after further investigation, Dr. Edmondson discovered that, in fact, those teams with better outcomes were admitting more mistakes, while the teams with fewer outcomes were more likely to hide their mistakes. So basically, she found out that teams with higher psychological safety were more likely to openly discuss errors and learn from them. Teams with lower psychological safety tended up to cover up errors, leading to missed opportunities for learning and improvement. So we know that psychological safety is essential for teams to function effectively and continuously improve. So I just want you to think about in the chat, what do you think about Dr. Edmondson's experiment? Did you think that teams that actually had more mistakes would actually do better? What did you think about that in terms of those results? All right, we're gonna delve a little bit into the next thing in terms of psychological safety. And when we talk about psychological safety, again, psychological safety is the belief that one will not be punished or humiliated for speaking up with ideas, concerns, or questions. Additionally, it is a climate where people feel safe to take risks, learn from mistakes, and contribute fully. Psychological safety includes the components of vulnerability, trust, and respect. Psychological safety is not just important in the classroom, but again, for other things in terms of where you're able to communicate and express yourself freely. And we're going to delve a little bit more into the components of psychological safety. So again, psychological safety includes the components of vulnerability, trust, and respect. When we talk about the the different components of psychological safety. First of all, we talk about vulnerability. And vulnerability, of course, is are we comfortable in sharing ideas or opinions? Next, we talk about trust. And trust is the belief in the good intentions of others. And then finally, when we think about respect, we talk about feeling valued and appreciated as a team member. So vulnerability means I'm able to share the fact that I don't understand something or that I may not know something well. Trust, again, is that piece where I'm talking about where whether I'm able to feel that you're able to actually feel my worth in terms of that. And then respect, again, is being able to feel valued as a member. One of the things that we want to delve a little bit more deeply into is trust. And what I found is the trust equation. So one of the components of psychological safety is really because there's a confusion about trust and psychological safety, and I want to make sure that we understand the difference. So next, we're going to actually delve into a video that discusses the difference between psychological safety and trust. So we're going to delve into this video in just 1 second.
The ability to build trust is one of the core capabilities of any leader. And yet, while we have an intuitive feel for when trust is present and when it's absent, it is difficult sometimes to identify the exact building blocks of trust. The trust equation of David Meister helps shed light on how to build trust with others. According to the trust equation, 3 things build trust. First, credibility. Credibility is the words we say, the skills and credentials we bring, and the way in which others experience our expertise. Second, reliability. Reliability is the actions we take, our predictability, and the ways in which others find us dependable. Third, intimacy. Intimacy is the extent to which others feel they can confide in us and perceive us as discreet, empathetic, human, and safe. And there is one thing that destroys trust, namely self-orientation. Self-orientation is the extent to which others feel we are focused on ourselves rather than on them. And no matter how strong your credibility, reliability, and intimacy are, if you're high on self-orientation, if you're focused on yourself, then building trust is difficult. So, as you think about the trust equation and its 4 elements, credibility, reliability, intimacy, and self-orientation, which element do you value most in others? And which element do you think others value most in you? For this and other perspectives on growing your leadership, please visit www.think.org.
And so with this video, it asks two questions at the end. It says, what component of trust do you value in others? And what components of trust do you think others value in you? So if you could type, just take a couple of minutes of reflection and type, what component of trust do you value in others? And I'm gonna go back to the trust equation. So again, there's three components. There is credibility, reliability, and intimacy. And they talked about in the previous in the other slide, they talked about, or in the video, they talked about credibility. Again, credibility is the words we say, the skills that and credentials that we bring, and the way we others experience our expertise. The second part is reliability, and the reliability is the actions that we take, our predictability, and the ways in which others find this dependable. So again, are we consistent? Do we say what we say? When we talk about credibility, do we have the skills and values and expertise to be of value? And then the third part, again, is intimacy, is to what extent others can confide in us and perceive us as being discreet. So do people feel that they can be candid in our presence? So again, what component of trust do you value in others, and what do you think others value in you? So if you could take a couple of minutes and put in the chat. Additionally, I saw some people put self-orientation, so as well. So let's take a couple of minutes. Darren put self-orientation. Vince put reliability and reliability. We had Naj. Casey put, I value reliability in others, and I think people value intimacy in me. Naj put reliability. Denise put credibility and reliability. Megan put credibility. So yeah, I'm seeing a theme about reliability and credibility. Again, that being consistent in what you say you're going to say, and then also having the skills and expertise and about what you do. And one of the things that it points out, and I don't know how many math people we have, but it says the larger the self-orientation is, or the larger that they see you relying on self, then the less trust that is. And of course, our math people know that, of course, the larger the denominator, the smaller our quotient is going to be, or our number is going to be, in terms of that. So, as more people see that you are putting more in terms of yourself, then the trust between those people will be less. And I want to delve a little bit deeper into. I have a visual that actually explains the difference between trust and psychological safety. So when we look at this graphic, it really delves into talking about the difference between psychological safety is the belief that your environment is safe for interpersonal risk taking. It is similar but slightly different from trust. So trust is really, will you give others the benefit of the doubt when you take a risk? But psychological safety really is, will others give you the benefit of the doubt for taking risk? So when we look at, and they give an example of, wow, is Bob going to freak out if I disagree with him? As opposed to psychological safety, which it says my team expects me to speak up if we, and this how we do things. So I think the last part of it is really, trust is personal. Psychological safety is a group phenomenon. So it's really about how psychological safety is how the group views you, as opposed to the interpersonal between one or two people, because you can have trust, but you cannot necessarily have psychological safety if there are other members in the team that don't have the expectation for you as well. So I think that's really key in terms of, we know that trust is a critical component of psychological safety, in terms of making sure that people understand, in terms of the credibility and reliability and vulnerability piece. But it's just one portion of psychological safety. It's not the one and the same. So I want to make sure that we understand and we get that point. Now I'm going to do a little analogy for a little bit, and talk about psychological safety in terms of being a local phenomenon. So meaning that it's a local phenomenon means that individuals' willingness to engage in learning behaviors in one team might be entirely different from the person's comfort in another team. So you may notice that individuals, like if individuals are on the social committee, they might actually be more likely to participate or engage, as opposed to a grade level team meeting. So you find that people in different scenarios or different settings actually behave differently. And I want to talk about this, and due to this local phenomenon, and since we're in, well, most of us are in Illinois and I'm in Chicago, I wanted to actually do a little analogy in terms of the quarterback, Justin Fields, and really talk about the fact that when we see this picture, we know that when he was playing for the Bears, he was kind of viewed as ineffective. But he was actually traded, and then he's now performing a little bit better. And I want to kind of delve into maybe the reasons why that's the case. So I'm going to show this clip from his one of his new coaches, or his new coach from Pittsburgh, Mike Tomlin. And I want you to think about, how does Coach Tomlin's mindset on coaching contribute to his players' psychological safety? So I'm going to play this for a second.
I love to hear coaches resist the responsibility of coaching.
What'd you say, Coach?
Because they're easy to beat.
What'd you just say, Coach?
I love coaches that resist the responsibility of coaches, that talk negatively about a dude that can't learn and blah, blah. Man, if everybody could learn, we need less coaches.
Yeah, that's real.
Right? If the group didn't need management, then we wouldn't make as much.
Yep.
I love reading draft evals and somebody's talking about anything other than pedigree. Talking about how poor somebody's hand usage is. Well, that's coaching. Right. I don't run away from coaching. I run to coaching.
Love it.
It all is in line with that not seeking comfort. Because when you're a coach that's talking about somebody can't learn, you're seeking comfort because your teaching is struggling.
Yep.
So that's Coach Mike Tomlin from the Pittsburgh Steelers, who's actually Justin Fields' new coach. And I wanted you to think about how does Tomlin's mindset actually affect psychological safety and with his players. So if you could type in the chat, how do you think that his view on coaching, again, he said one of the things is he doesn't run from coaching, he runs to coaching. And when he looks at different um, challenges, how he actually addresses it. So how do you think that Coach Tomlin actually helps in terms of building trust and that psychological safety for his players? Thank you, Ms. Denise. You say he has a desire to make players better. He cares. Definitely. Casey said confidence and belief in his team. It sounds like he takes it on, and Megan said it sounds like he takes it on to make players better, not just expect them to play better. Yes. And I think, from again, confidence, belief, that builds trust, that you're willing to work with players that can have a perceived challenge or deficit. So I think within that, his mindset is that I'm not going to run from it. I'm going to run to it, and I'm actually going to coach them up. Yes, Darren said, not afraid of a challenge. And I want to go back to,
I love to hear coaching.
not going back to that part, but again, I want to go back to this display of everything. So we had Justin Fields at the Bears. Then we have in the middle is actually a tweet that was from Russell Wilson, who is actually his, well, could be considered his competition or teammate because they're competing for the same position. But how did Justin Fields, he moved from performing and engaging in a way at one organization to thriving at another organization? And he was where he was viewed as ineffective. But Wilson, he welcomed him to the environment, and and also because of his coach, again, that psychological safety was created in terms of making sure that he felt better. And so my hypothesis and my inference would conclude that being in an environment where there's a belief of you as an individual, as well as the team and coaches learning to take risks, contributed to his psychological safety in order for him to perform better. And so although when we talk about this local phenomenon as of psychological safety, again, on one team, he wasn't performing as well. On another team, he performed better. So again, when you put those conditions in place where you're able to have someone to thrive, then you're able to do so. So we're going to move from the gridiron to the classroom and really talk about psychological safety and where I've gotten most of my information and research from. So when we delve into, and I'm going to talk about this information, and it's a lot of information, but the internal coherence framework provides a comprehensive approach for organizational effectiveness. And this book, if you have not read it, it's wonderful. By focusing on leadership practices, so when we look at the part in red, when we focus on leadership practices, so again, leadership for learning, psychological safety has it, and also providing meaning professional development. Also, when we include organizational processes, so you have to have processes in place for staff members and teachers to be effective. So there needs to be collaboration around improvement strategy, teachers' involvement in instructional decisions, teachers having shared understanding of effective practices and support for team and team processes. Additionally, we have to have, again, that belief system. So efficacy belief. So we talk about that individual efficacy, which is the belief in yourself. And then also collective efficacy is the belief in the people around you. And then finally, we know that that produces student achievement. So within that, we really have parts where it's really linked to, again, individual instructional behaviors as well as whole school achievement. And I've learned a lot in terms of psychological safety from this book because it really talks about if you have a framework and you put practices in place where you have leadership, you have systems and structures in place, and you have beliefs, that it really impacts and improves student achievement. So within within the book and the internal coherence framework, it really talks about psychological safety. And my takeaways are as follows. First, it says the psychological safety is critical for understanding organizational learning because interactions between individuals and their concerns about consequences would ultimately shut down vital learning, such as sharing information and knowledge, admitting mistakes, and asking for help. Additionally, feelings of safety foster willingness to engage in improvement behaviors, including learning from failure, um, speaking up, speaking up with suggestions to improve group processes, or offering ideas that challenge the status quo. So again, when we create that learning organization, we want to ensure that we offer that psychological safety. Additionally, we learn about benefits of psychological safety in terms of the fact that it promotes individuals' willingness to participate in team learning experiences. Also, it helps overcome anxiety and defensiveness when presented with data that contradicts their expectations or hopes. So again, I want to kind of summarize this fact is that when you have psychological safety, individuals are able to participate in team learning activities. So whether it's working with lessons, planning lessons, or looking at student data, or it's any activity where it involves teaching and learning. Additionally, psychological safety helps you overcome anxiety and defensiveness when presented data that contradicts that expectations or hopes. So when you find out data that where um, students may be experiencing difficulty in mastering concepts, you're not going to be defensive and blame it on the students, but really going to be able to look and be able to look inward in terms of uh, finding out the root causes and the sources of that and really forming an action plan to work. Additionally, when we talk about leaders having actions that show appreciation for others' contribution, that also helps contribute in terms of when we talk about psychological safety. And so we know that there are actual behaviors that leaders need to engage in terms of making sure that happens. So there were summarized in terms of that piece. Um, so when leaders actively question and listen to employees, we know that that actually shows that they're actually taking into consideration their appreciation and their contribution. Additionally, when leaders spend time on activities such as problem identification, knowledge sharing, or reflections. Additionally, leaders, when they press for reasoning and creative solutions. Also, when leaders demonstrate concern for alternative or minority viewpoints, so not just going with what the popular opinion is, but actually being able to say, okay, have we looked at another solution, or we have someone who has a dissenting viewpoint, and how can we actually incorporate that into what we're doing? And then also leaders stressing the importance of error analysis as a learning tool. So do you engage in problems of practice? Or if something doesn't go right, do you have an after action review in terms of that piece? So there are some things that you can do to engage that actually show that you actually appreciate others' contributions in terms of the learning process. And then finally, leaders that acknowledge the value of individualized special bodies of knowledge for a shared task. So again, when we think about, is there someone who has, a specialty in terms of utilizing technology? Or is there a person who is good at small group? Or is there a person who is good at finding details? Or is there a person who is good at copywriting? How do you are able to acknowledge those in terms of that piece and be able to show the appreciation for that, which builds that psychological safety in terms of that. And these are practices that really foster public learning. Out of the list, can you identify some of the things that you have engaged in terms of your actions to show that you are fostering public learning? So can someone or can anyone put in the chat things that you've seen or that things that you have engaged in terms of this process? Oh, I just asked, what were some of the from these actions, what are some of the things that you've engaged in terms of showing fostering public learning? I see that active questioning, error analysis as a learning tool. I see actively questioning and listening from Vince. I see creative solutions and knowledge sharing. So again, thank you for those who and Casey, active and authentic listening. So again, these are ways that again leaders can show appreciation for others' contribution. What we're going to do now, or what we're going to look at now, is a strategy that's been used in terms of making sure that we're making commitments to shared learning. So again, the goal is to increase team members' willingness to actively and honestly contribute their ideas, evaluations, and suggestions for change. We want to also, I want to make sure that we differentiate because a lot of times during team meetings or team interactions, we do norm setting, which is great. And I want to make sure that we differentiate. Norm setting is important because it provides guidelines for effective team function. So, like, make sure that, norm setting, we start and end on time. We make sure that we have equity of voice, and that's good because that shows us how to focus on appropriate ways to perform during the meeting. What the strategy I'm going to show is really talking about commitments, and really that focuses on it's going to focus on ways to support each other in understanding identified problem or practice, evaluation, possible solutions, and committing to a new course of action. So I really want us to look at thinking about, again, commitments versus setting norms. And I really want to set the kind of the analogy for like, it's basically like classroom rules versus a classroom contract. The usual communication and delivery of classroom rules is usually top down and usually very technical, but it may be important, but the classroom contract is really created for those who are affected by the actions and really have more buy-in and really to be adaptive. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at this protocol, and really this protocol is called, it's making commitments to shared learning, and we can look at the protocol in its entirety, and we're going to break it down into each of its components. So the first part of the protocol, so the first section, if we look at it, there's an individual reflection in which each team member answers the following questions. So what supports your individual learning and what shuts down your individual learning? So they have about 5 minutes to engage in that. Then once you do that, you're going to go to the next section, which includes the group share out. So when you think about as well as what conditions would support or shut down your learning in the group. So, and I want you to think about yourself. So when we think about these questions, and I want you to think about like when you're in a session or within a group, what supports your individual learning and what shuts down your individual learning? Because we want to think about these things as we talk about team dynamics and how we can work and make the group more effective. So when you think about what supports as you as an individual learner, what supports your learning and what shuts you down as individual learning. So if you can type in the chat. And Nash is what shuts me down is when I can't see how it fits into the big picture, right? Um, Casey said, when I am seen and heard without judgment, supports open discussion and dialogue from all stakeholders. Great. Opportunity to discuss and exchange ideas, feeling supported and sometimes having to see the small steps of progress. Awesome. I think you all must have seen my next slides, which you haven't, but really, I was able to come up with some of the things in terms of um, factors that may support individual learning. So some of the things I have, and I see some of the things that are things that have come up, having shared goals. Also, when we talk about diverse perspectives, collaboration, um, we have effective communication. We have I see supportive environment, active participation, feedback. So again, we want to make sure, and these are just some of the things that I brainstormed in terms of, but these are some of the things that you were able to come up with. So that's awesome that it's confirming that information as well. So we want to make sure that we want to have things um, that support our individual learning. And then conversely, we want to also know the things that hurt the group learning as well. And as we are getting a little bit short of time, I want to make sure that, and you can say if you agree with these things or if they resonate with you, you can just put that they resonate with you. Factors that hurt group learning. So dominant personalities. So those are individuals who dominate the discussion, who and make it difficult to contribute or collaborate. Lack of engagement. If some members are not participating actively, it can hinder the learning process of everyone. Conflict. So again, unresolved conflicts can create a negative and unproductive learning environment. Ineffective communication. So poor communication can lead to misunderstandings and confusion, hindering learning. Lack of support. If people feel unsupported or undervalued, they may feel unmotivated to learn. And also groupthink. We want to also, when group members are afraid to express how, if they have a dissenting opinion, it could lead to poor decision making and hinder the learning. So within that process that we talked about, um, so within this protocol, you're able to synthesize the information about the commitments that have been made, and then synthesize, prioritize, and document the most important commitments. So once you have looked at, things that hurt, that allow people to learn individually and things that hinder it, what we would do is, chart it and put it and document the most important commitments. And then the most important part is, I think, in step 4 is really that planning piece. You'll do the progress monitoring of your commitments. So you'll document when and how you will revisit the commitments to support your learning over time. To me, this is an important step to ensure that this is a living document and not just something that you created one time and then left in the proverbial binder. So we want to make sure that, again, with the first step of establishing that psychological safety, we want to find out how you learn as an individual, and we want to learn also learn how what hinders you as an individual, and then we want to collectively make commitments based on that piece. So that's the first part of that protocol. So some of the takeaways from that is really we want to make sure that school leaders choose to do this staff wide, but also make sure that you do this with individual teams and staff teams. So not just doing it school wide or district wide, but doing it with specific teams, because again, we know that psychological safety is a local phenomenon. So we have to make sure that we cater and do things specialized for our different teams that we have. The next thing is that we have to make sure that our commitment should be recorded on a poster or a shared document, which can include your agenda, so that the team can revisit and revise as necessary. And then finally, after completing a cycle of reviewing the commitments, team members might ask questions like, did everyone on the team participate in our last round of problem solving? Did anyone feel like they carried an undue burden? Do we need a new protocol to best capture everyone's best thinking this time around? So that kind of summarizes that process and really thinking um, about how we can really put psychological safety in the forefront, but really by identifying our learning styles. So this is just the beginning. I know it was just a little teaser in terms of this piece, but and I'm a Peloton person because I like to exercise, and really this is the warm up around psychological safety. So real psychological safety requires more than just making a set of formal commitments for respecting our colleagues' learning, but we have to move beyond just awareness or tolerance, and we have to move towards appreciating the different styles that people bring in terms of their learning. So the next protocol I'm going to do, and I have to do this really quickly, is really the strategy of appreciating the differences of individuals. And this protocol is the Compass Protocol from School Reform Initiative, which is an exercise in understanding the preferences of group work. And um, what you'll notice is very similar to any kind of work personality test, whether it's colors or I've done Deloitte's business chemistry or strengths finders, etc., is that you have different descriptions of people. So like I know that you have the North, which is the take charge person, who really, is really big on, making sure that things are accomplished and processed. Then you have the East person, which is the big picture person. Then you have the West person, which is the person who asks the hard questions and really inquiry. And then you have the South person, who is the more social and the feeling person who wants to make sure that everyone is taken care of in terms of that. And like I said, any of the personality things that you've done is very similar. So like you don't have to, if you want to use this Compass protocol, you can. If you want to use another one, again, I think, that's fine as well. But I think the most important and the essential part is really the reflection part, and the questions that you ask. So really making sure that you talk about you again, what are the strengths of your style in terms of how you learn? What are the limitations of your style? What style did you find most difficult to work with and why? And then what do people with other directions or styles need to do in terms of working effectively or collaboratively? And then what do you value about the other styles? I think this part and this reflection piece is really essential and key in terms of making sure that you have a plan and action in terms of working with people who are different from you. So whether you're a person who is mostly a person who is concerned with getting things done and making sure it's efficient. How do you work with someone who's more social, and making sure that you all have that discussion and really having things in place in terms of, how you all going to work together and collaboratively and appreciate each other's differences. And then also as a leader, making sure that how do you incorporate, so we talked about, how do you incorporate differences within that. So like I noticed that, you're more social. So how can you really you utilize someone who is social with someone who is more action oriented, and how do you make sure that those things, or someone who is more introverted, how do you make sure that there's consideration within the meetings or within the learning, that to make sure that they are included within the session as well. So I think that's important and key in terms of doing that. I'm going to just provide a little bit more resources as well. The next thing I'm going to include is the internal coherence framework survey, which actually talks about psychological safety. So I think that that's important that to utilize these as a kind of a barometer to see the progress of how you're doing in terms of psychological safety within the school year. So you can do this at different points to progress monitor, probably at the beginning of the year and then the end of the year, but looking at the questions that they ask. So like, and this is just a snippet of the survey, and you can utilize it to see which part is most relevant. But some of the questions ask like, are people in the school, are they eager to share information about what does or what does not work? And really being able to see, it's a Likert scale is from highly inaccurate to highly accurate. Are people allowed to make mistakes? And is it considered a part of the learning process within our school or district? If I make a mistake at this school or district, is it held against me? Um, Additionally, are teachers, do they feel comfortable with experimenting with untried teaching approaches, even if the approach might not work? In this school, is it easy for me to speak up about what's on my mind? And then people in this school or district, are they comfortable talking about problems and disagreements about teaching and learning? So again, these give you again prompts in terms of making a determination of where you're at. So you can utilize this in terms of seeing your progress in terms of psychological safety. And then there's an article which I will see if I can send as well. It also talks about psychological safety from a person who promoted psychological safety, but then there was a breach in psychological safety and the strategies that they used in terms of um, of of really mitigating that challenge. So I think that's also a good resource as well in terms of psychological safety. And with that, I know there was a lot that was presented in a few amount of time. I did want to offer an opportunity for questions. So I know that if there were any questions in the chat, or if you have any questions at this time, I'm available to answer that.
Outstanding. Thank you so much, Daniel, for sharing with us the importance of the psychological safety within our leadership teams. As he said, we've got some time for questions, so feel free to type those into the chat. Any thoughts, comments, things that you learned, excuse me, choking, things that you learned in this webinar. Daniel, thanks for sharing that link as well.
Yes.
I will be saving this recording to send out tomorrow with the ISB evaluation form. So for anybody who's interested in getting PD clock hours for attending, you need to attend the full session. You need to complete that evaluation link that I'll send via email tomorrow. And then you'll also have a link to the recording to review as well. And you'll get 1 hour of professional development credit for attending this webinar.
Yeah, and I just want to, I know I had some things about next steps. So, again, I just want to kind of recap things. By fostering psychological safety, we are able to engage our teams in improvement behaviors, including learning from failure, speaking up when suggestions to improve processes, and offering ideas for challenging the status quo. If you are able to, and I will, share, the resources as well in terms of creating a plan for shared learning by making commitments for shared learning. You want to document and revisit these commitments during your professional learning sessions, and then also learn about each member's learning styles in order to create and cultivate conditions that allow team members to work respectively and collaboratively. And then just finally, if you want to keep in touch, please do so. That's my information, djp.educator@gmail.com, impactmypathway.com, and my phone number as well. So if you want to text or call, or if you want more information about how to utilize these protocols, and any other information about psychological safety. So again, I just want to say thank you for spending a little bit of your afternoon with me. And again, please feel free to reach out, and I hope you take care and keep in touch.
Excellent. Thank you, Dana, for sharing everything this afternoon. And thanks to our participants for your engagement in the chat. That's always helpful when we can get a little bit of a dialogue going with the presenter. So thank you so much for all your participation. I'm going to now stop the recording.